Marred with delays, the opposition says they were a farce. Elections in Democratic Republic of Congo could mark the country's first democratic transition. Joseph Kabila has been in power since his father was assassinated in 2001. He says any irregularities were minor. In Bangladesh, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina re-elected for a third term, her party taking 96% of the vote. But the opposition is crying foul there as well, and violence on polling day led to at least 17 deaths. Meanwhile, ring in the new year in protest. A group of professional unions in Sudan is calling on people to take to the streets this Monday and to stay on them until after midnight. A demonstration outside the presidential palace with one demand: that the president leaves office. Hello and a very warm welcome to you. I'm Eve Irvine. It's good to have you with us. While complaining of widespread irregularities, opposition parties in Democratic Republic of Congo are crying foul over elections there. Millions went to the polls to vote in Joseph Kabila's successor. He is due to step down next month after 18 years in office. He took over after his father's assassination and says that any irregularities in the voting process were minor ones. Yuka Royer takes us through the day.
At long last, counting gets underway. In most of the Democratic Republic of Congo, voters turned out in force on Sunday for an election which had been postponed 3 times. But serious technical problems were also reported across the country, including malfunctioning of voting machines. In the capital, Kinshasa, some polling stations faced power outages and severe delays. In Goma, an opposition stronghold in North Kivu, some people reported their names were missing from voter rolls. Opposition candidate Martin Fayulu was quick to denounce the situation.
All these irregularities will surely have a negative impact on the electoral process. Our coalition will determine our course of action when the time comes.
The party of another opposition candidate, Felix Tshisekedi, said they witnessed many frauds which could work in the ruling party's favour. The head of Congo's Electoral Commission, however, stressed that everything went smoothly, with just some rare minor difficulties. Emmanuel Ramazani Shadari, the former interior minister backed by President Joseph Kabila, was happy with the voting process.
I think victory is on my side, and that tonight I will be president.
To monitor the polls, about 60,000 Congolese observers were deployed across the country. But many of the usual European and American observers were not invited.
Well, meanwhile, across in Bangladesh, opposition parties there are also crying foul following general elections, saying there was vote rigging. There was violence during the vote too. At least 17 people reported to have been killed. The country's Prime Minister, Sheikh Hasina, announced the winner of that vote, giving her a third term in office. The Election Commission says Hasina's party won 288 of the 300 seats in Parliament. Brian Quinn reports.
A landslide victory for Bangladesh's ruling party. The country's election committee congratulating Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina on winning a third term in office. Hasina's allies pleased with the outcome.
Most of our friends abroad and nationally said elections must be inclusive and participatory. I think over there we were overwhelmingly successful.
The opposition National Unity Front Alliance reportedly picking up just a handful of parliamentary seats. For them, the election was farcical. They're calling on the National Election Commission to declare it void.
The situation that has been created by an appallingly bad election can be corrected by holding a proper election under a neutral administration. We've asked the Election Commission to cancel this election and to hold another election as early as possible under a neutral administration.
The historic win for Hasina consolidates her decade-long stint at the head of government. She's credited with promoting development and improving the economy, but has been accused of authoritarianism and human rights abuses, which she denies. The election campaign had been tainted by allegations of government repression. Hasina's main rival, Khaleda Zia, has been in jail since February on graft charges she says are politically motivated. Authorities had shut down high-speed internet in the run-up to the vote in order, they said, to prevent the spread of rumors. deadly violence during the campaign spilled over into clashes between ruling and opposition supporters as voting took place. Police say 17 people died in election-related violence Sunday.
The detention of former Nissan Motors chairman Carlos Ghosn has been extended by 10 days. The Tokyo District Court's decision means he will remain at the city's main detention centre, where he's been held since November 19th, when he was arrested on charges of financial misconduct. US Senator and senior Republican Lindsey Graham says he trusts that Donald Trump is committed to defeating the Islamic State group and that the withdrawal of US troops from Syria will be done when it's sure that the group has been permanently destroyed. Graham made the statement after talks with the president. He had earlier voiced concern over the idea of pulling troops out. Camille Nedelec has the full story.
Lindsey Graham's strategy lunch with US President Donald Trump prompted another change of heart. The withdrawal from Syria is not the disaster Graham first feared.
I like what I heard. We still have some differences, but I will tell you that the president is thinking long and hard about Syria, how to withdraw our forces, but at the same time achieve our national security interests, which are to make sure that ISIS is destroyed, they never come back, that our allies, the Kurds, are protected.
The announcement that the United States will be withdrawing its 2,000 troops from Syria was met with surprise amongst its allies. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis and Brett McGurk, the special envoy for the global coalition to defeat Islamic State, resigned in the wake of the news. Graham had initially called an immediate withdrawal an Obama-like mistake that would endanger national security because it would allow the Islamic State group to rebuild. Graham also feared it would be a betrayal of the US-backed Kurdish fighters of the YPG militia, who would be left vulnerable to neighbouring Turkey. But after his meeting, Lindsey Graham indicated that Trump will be managing a smart and slowed-down pullout. To help protect the Kurds, US military commanders are recommending that the Kurdish fighters be allowed to keep their US-supplied weapons.
Well, meanwhile, on the issue of the government shutdown in the US, Graham was also upbeat following his meeting with Trump, saying that the president was open to his idea of providing work permits to dreamers, people brought illegally to the US as children, in exchange for money for that physical border barrier, which is the issue that brought the government to a standstill. The United Nations has cast doubt on Houthi rebel claims that its fighters have withdrawn from the port city of Hodeidah. The UN welcomed any redeployment but said it should be independently verified. Pro-government forces in Yemen have also expressed doubts over the handover process. Owen Barnell reports.
Houthi rebel soldiers leaving the port of Hodeidah. The rebel group declared its withdrawal had begun from the Red Sea port on Saturday, handing control over to the Yemeni Coast Guard, the force in charge of protecting Yemen's ports before the war. Claims that have now been called into question by both pro-government forces and the UN.
Any redeployment would only be credible if all parties and the United Nations are able to observe and verify that it is in line with the Stockholm Agreement.
Pro-government officials dismissed the move over fears Houthis have placed fighters in the Coast Guard and that the force may remain loyal to the rebel group after its withdrawal.
Imagine that the whole world is watching, and that in fact we are the spectators of a great farce directed by the Houthi rebels.
The ceasefire between the Houthi rebels, aligned with Iran, and the Saudi-led pro-government coalition is fragile. It is being overseen by UN observers led by Patrick Kamert. The retired Dutch general has expressed disappointment over missed opportunities to build up confidence. The Houthis have so far failed to honour an agreement to open a humanitarian corridor between Hodeidah and the capital, Sana'a.
Calling on protesters to take to the streets and stay on them until after midnight, a group of professional unions in Sudan is organising a march on the president's palace. The demand that Omar al-Bashir steps down. He's been in office for 29 years now. Anti-government protests have been ongoing for almost 2 weeks, sparked by a hike in the price of bread. According to official figures from Khartoum, 19 people have been killed in those demonstrations. Amnesty International, however, says the death toll is higher. Al-Bashir has called on police to avoid using excessive force against protesters.
The duty of the state to maintain security without abuse and to implement internal security principles using the least possible force. The purpose is not to kill people. The goal is to maintain security and stability for the citizens.
Okay, let's take a look now at some other news in brief. 30 Russian children whose mothers are in prison in Iraq for belonging to the Islamic State group have arrived back into Moscow. Their fathers are thought to have been killed in combat. Thousands of Russians are said to have travelled to join the jihadists over the last few years. And since last year, around 100 women and children, mostly from Russia's Muslim-majority Caucasus, have returned under a programme championed by Chechen leader Ramzan Kadyrov. Anti-missile defences and warplanes being activated in Brazil for the inauguration of its new president, Jair Bolsonaro. Bolsonaro, the 63-year-old former paratrooper, was elected in October. He was attacked during that election campaign. Well, on Tuesday, he'll be sworn in to office at an event attended by at least 10 foreign heads of state and other high-ranking officials, including Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. And increasing surveillance at their borders, Britain and France agreed to boost bilateral cooperation when it comes to migration. The move comes after authorities noted an increase in attempts to cross the English Channel since October. 43 people tried to make it across on Christmas Day and December 26th. Well, the theme this year is fraternity, friendship, but protests are being planned on Paris's Champs-Élysées this Monday. A fireworks display and sound and light show to herald in the new year is to go ahead as planned. But the anti-government Yellow Vest movement says it will also be on the avenue and that its protests will go on well into 2019. Owen Barnell tells us more.
Paris's Champs-Élysées will soon welcome in the new year, when, as usual, hundreds will descend on the street for the celebrations. Though this time, they may be joined by France's Yellow Vests. On a Facebook event page, thousands have said they will be coming out. Despite the possibility of clashes, tourists on Sunday said they would not be deterred from attending the celebrations.
No, it doesn't frighten us. We're here to take part in whatever happens, whatever the conditions, without fear.
I stayed afraid a lot, but my husband secured me and said, "No, honey, there's a lot of security here, don't worry about this."
Paris police have taken steps to ensure Monday is as trouble-free as possible. From the afternoon on, the Champs-Élysées will be closed off to vehicles, and within the perimeter in blue, parking will be banned. After weeks of protests marked by violence and rioting, police have advised business owners to put away their terraced seating areas. This restaurant owner has gone even further.
I hired 2 guards who will stand outside. They cost around €1,000. We have to pay for it ourselves.
Paris's City Hall decided to go ahead with the firework and light shows that lit up the skies last year. This time, to access the area, visitors will have to pass through barriers. Everyone will be searched, yellow vest or not.
If someone gets stopped, like we've seen with improvised weapons, whether it's paving stones, metal bars, hammers, or wood, that means that you appear to be potentially violent. At that point, of course, you will be arrested.
Across France, close to 148,000 officers will be on duty to ensure the celebrations go off without a hitch.
Well, meanwhile, taking Christmas decorations to new depths, a group of Russian divers have placed their Christmas tree at the bottom of a lake. It's become somewhat of a tradition of theirs that started 40 years ago. Christmas in Russia is most widely celebrated on January 7th, according to the Russian Orthodox calendar. Okay, well, that wraps it up from this edition, but do stay with us here on France 24.